Today is September 30th, 2021. I'm Leah Cohen, the Oral History Manager at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library. On behalf of PMML, I have the honor to interview Staff Sergeant Patti Lindley, who served in the U.S. Marine Corps on active duty, and then later the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves from 1973 to 1976. And we look forward to hearing your story. So we'll talk a little bit about your background, then mostly about your service, and afterwards briefly about your life after the service, as well as some reflections.
Great.
Okay, so to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born actually on an Air Force base, Bolling Air Force Base, and my dad was in the Air Force at the time of Korea, stateside, and he was serving in DC, and so hence I was born in Bolling Air Force Base.
Oh.
That is no longer in place.
Was your father in the Air Force at the time?
Yes. And I believe he got out as a corporal.
And did you grow up there as well, or did you grow up elsewhere?
Actually, when upon his discharge, we went back to his hometown of Middletown, Ohio.
Oh.
And Middletown is, hence its name, in between Dayton and Cincinnati.
Oh.
And so we went back to Middletown, Ohio. And we built a house. My father built a house in Monroe, which was Ohio, about maybe 10 minutes away. And very, very small, very agrarian, very Midwestern, one stoplight. And it still has one stoplight in town.
Oh, my. What was your father's MOS in the Air Force and then later back in civilian life? What was his occupation?
Oh, back in, as you know, in Air Force, I do not know. I have to share a little story with this, with my Air Force, with my dad. The biggest item that he would talk about when I was born and throughout my life was that I cost him $6 to be born. And he would always joke about that. And I was his $6 baby in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force. And then later on, he was a banker, a vice president of a banker when he retired in Middletown. Very people-oriented, very personable, and would shake hands with his participants in a loan for a car, a house, just in a shake of a hand. Mm-hmm. So that shows his character and shows how, you know, he was trusted, you know, by the bank as well as his community. And he was a very popular banker and just a good dad.
Yeah, like a good person, and also
yes,
very astute as well, you know. Yes. Yeah. What was it like for you growing up in Middletown?
Yep, when growing up in Monroe, Middletown, I grew up by at that time it was a horse farm, but now it is a cow farm. And it was very small. Like I said, one light, one stoplight, and very active community. And it, believe it or not, Middletown was the home of Jerry Lucas, and he was a famous basketball player back in the day. And currently, we had it with the Cubs, Kyle Schwarber, and now he's with the Red Sox. And he helped win our Cubs baseball series, the whatever you call it, the baseball. Anyway, we just won the big one a couple years ago, and Kyle was on that. He is from Middletown, and his dad is a local sheriff from Middletown. World Series. How could I forget the World Series and the Cubs?
Oh,
Took 100 years. But anyway, so
wow.
it's all, and we had a Miss America from Monroe. She was in my chemistry class. But the thing is, it was genuine people, very small, and farmers, and proud to be farmers.
It sounds like a very warm, honest community. Yeah.
It is hardworking, blue collar farmers, and we had a steel mill, so we're typically blue collar, and we're just good Midwestern people, hardworking, ethical
people. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have 2 sisters and a brother. I'm the eldest. And they always said I was short, but I could kick. And, I was, helping mom with 4 kids. We were 2 years apart, and handful for my mother. So I would help out.
Oh, wow. And which high school did you go to?
I went to Lemon Monroe High School, and it's in Monroe, Ohio. And I graduated in 1973. And gosh, I was in 5 or 6 different bands. Our high school band got to tour Europe. And that's pretty good when you're a junior in high school. I played trumpet. And some of my people that I played with, one is David Bell. And he wrote all the scores for a Star Trek movie, and he has written scores for Star Trek, the TV series.
Wow.
And he is very well renowned. He got his PhD from Miami University. So I was that, and I was a cheerleader, but more importantly, I was in my National Honor Society. And oddly enough, I won the American Daughters of the Revolution Award in high school. I think I spent more time at the high school actually in my last couple of years than actually at home. It was just kind of like a revolving door, because I was really active student council and in my high school. It was fun. It was my life.
Yeah, it sounds like you took a very active role. Yeah.
And enjoyed it. I was a competitive swimmer up till I was a sophomore. But more importantly, I had my first high school job as a waitress in the summer with 4 kids. I had to earn my own spending money, and was quite the waitress at 6 o'clock in the morning serving eggs.
Wow.
Serving breakfast.
That is impressive. Which were your favorite subjects in school?
My favorite subjects were science. My hardest subject was math. And my wonderful high school teacher, who's no longer with us, was Mary Miller. And she was astounding. I had outstanding teachers throughout Lemon Monroe High School through my high school days. And my best friend now, he always has been, Mike Fulmer, used to tutor me through high school on advanced math. I was in all advanced classes. And he said I was the reason why he didn't take up teaching. But we're still friends today. He became a brilliant engineer instead.
Okay, and you graduated high school taking all these classes, so it all worked.
Yes, it got. But more importantly, this is the most interesting. Well, one of the interesting things. I had a scholarship at Akron University. Went up to many universities. Went up to Akron and got a scholarship. And I knew I wasn't ready. And here I was, National Honor Society, like 30th in my class, blah, 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 up, 2% of my class, whatever. And I knew I wasn't mentally ready. So my dad was in the Air Force. So I went to a recruiter and my parents didn't know. And I said to the Air Force recruiter, I said, I'm interested. Can you tell me a little bit about the Air Force? My dad was in the Air Force. And he said, sure. And we talked and he said, well, I can get you in 6-7 months. So I went right around the corner to the Marine Corps, Gunny Sergeant Fondo. And I said, do you have women in the Marine Corps? All I know about the Marine Corps is Gomer Pyle. That's all I know. And he said, yes, ma'am. Let me talk to you. And it was like magic. It was just like a force. And so I signed. And so he went with me to tell my parents that I just had signed up for the Marine Corps because I was of age. And they didn't faint. They said, okay, what else is Patty going to do? And I joined the Marines, the best.
Interesting. I was wondering what the reaction of your parents would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they would have faint. I told my psychology teacher at Monroe, we called her Mama McCluskey, and she said, well, did your parents faint? Because it was quite an honor to get a scholarship. And I said, no, they just smiled and just said, okay, we're honored. And so the story goes.
Wow. So although I know the Vietnam War was winding down around 1973, the Paris Peace Accords between the U.S., South Vietnam on the one hand, and the communist North Vietnam, Viet Cong on the other. Like, did you have any personal concerns about being possibly, shipped out to Vietnam?
Yeah, that's a really good question. At that time, to be a WM or Woman Marine, we did not participate in combat. And the only participants at that time in the 70s on hostile campaigns were the medical, typically, and the Army and the Navy. And the Marine Corps is part of the Navy. Mm-hmm. So we're ground forces. And so women Marines were kept stateside to keep the U.S. going, while our men, our brothers, would do what they're supposed to do, take care of business.
Interesting. Yeah. What was your opinion at the time of protests against the war that were going on? And
by that, couple of things. One is being a high schooler and being from a small town. You would hear it, you would hear the news, but it was not real. I mean, it was, I had something to do. I was going to the Corps, and it was hurtful, but then coming back and being a Marine and being through that and then being discharged, and knowing that my brothers came back a lot of time in disgrace, and some of it was even told that they were spit on.
Yeah.
It hurt
Yeah.
because we served in honor.
Yeah.
We served for the U.S.
Yes.
And, that was a small majority, but all veterans, no matter Afghanistan, whatever,
Yeah.
all veterans serve with honor, and they serve.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Well, so you've signed up to be a Marine, and how
Same
long
as,
is it before
excuse
you're
me,
going for
yeah.
the basic training?
Oh, I was going to say same as Gomer Pyle. Our basic training in the Corps as WMs or Women Marines, they're longer than the Army and the Navy men training.
Oh, how long a period of training is it?
9 weeks. We have 9 weeks of training.
Wow.
Of boot camp. And I believe the other services, men and women, are, I believe, 6. So either we're very hard-headed, or we're very, very secure when we leave the boot camp. We are very secure.
Yes. Yeah.
We are well informed and well taught. Trust me.
Where did you do your basic training? Was it at Paris Island?
Of course. Yeah.
That seems to be the only place that I know.
All women Marine are at Paris Island. Excuse me, but it's so funny because the men, there is a base out in California, Camp Pendleton, and they do training there. They do boot camp there, and we call them Hollywood Marines.
So you're toughing it out in Paris Island.
Oh, you've never did a run at 6 a.m. and you have to take salts so you don't get dehydrated. And then you have to splash yourself with some really fragrant mosquito repellent, because the mosquitoes down at Paris Island are at least 3 or 4 feet big.
Oh my goodness.
They're huge. And when you're running in the morning and you're yawning and you get a bug in your mouth, it's like, ugh. But anyway, that's, but that Paris Island, I had just come from high school and waitressing in the morning, and now I'm in Paris Island, and it taught me to be a Marine. And the first 5 or 6 weeks or whatever tore me down as, just a person, a U.S. person, and brought me up as a Marine. And I will always be grateful. Grateful.
That's what you wrote in the Her Story application. You wrote, "Thank you, Marine Corps, for my service, training, and discipline. I can do what I set my mind and spirit to do, and then I get the job done." So I guess my question is, could you describe how the training and the discipline was so formative for you, or what was the process like of being broken down in order to be built up?
Oh, that's very interesting. Remember, I'm a whole 18 years old. I'm an open book, and I'm from a very small town. And to that first night you get in, and after saying goodbye to your mom, and I said goodbye, and she's breaking down crying at the Cincinnati Reserve Station, and I go, and I'm in this barracks at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I get there at 2, and at 4 or 5 in the morning, I have a garbage can lid rolled down the center aisle of the barracks, and I have the lights turned on, and I have 2 drill instructors saying, "Get up now and get in front of your bunk." And I just left Monroe, Ohio, and the journey begins. The journey begins. It was remarkable. And Staff Sergeant or Sergeant Lapolis, I believe she was sergeant, was my drill instructor. And I have seen her eyelashes. She got into my face and stuff. And, you know, after going through boot camp, it's tough. It's very tough. It's very tough, mentally and psychologically. And you leave, you're a Marine. You don't care what sex you are. You don't care how tall you are. You just get the job done. You find out the job. You find out your team, and you get the job done. No questions.
Could you describe what a typical day was like?
Well, you would, it was really interesting. You would get up and do your run, and you had to get your bunk squared away and your yourself squared away. And remember, I just got out of the bathroom with my sisters back in Monroe with curling irons and everything. And with the Marine Corps, you showered and got everything ready in 10 minutes or less. And so that was kind of a different way of thinking. And you would do your run, you go to breakfast, and you actually go to school, and you have different drill instructors and officers teach you different courses. And then you would have either drill training, and you would have, Marines like to run a lot and run and run and run and run. And then we have more training and more instruction and running. And then you would have close order drill, and you had to learn how to drill. And it was just a mind set in listening, instructions, and obeying instructions and instilling leadership. Because one day they'll say, you lead the squad, you lead the platoon. Another day, another person would lead the platoon. And you had to lead them through drill. You had to give them to the instruction on time. And you're being watched. And on forming your squad, your battalion, and I think there was 20, 30 of us.
So it's very intense. Did you also learn how to use guns or any other type of ammunition? Or
that's a very good question. No. At that point in time, women Marines did not learn how to holster a gun or weapons. And it's so very interesting that last night I went to a recruitment station to pick up a standard, a flag. And I saw 3 young Marines, women Marines, about ready to go in. And 2 of them are going into firearms operations and deployment, which means that they're going to learn weaponry. And outstanding.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story a little bit later about a gun in me, and that's later on at my duty station. So that was interesting, but no, I didn't have the opportunity. But our male Marines were taught with guns, with rifles, and they could give a specific name, and they had to take it apart and put it together blindfolded, because in war you might be, in the dark and all that. But no, we didn't have the opportunity to do that.
Were your
But I
drill,
would take a weapon automatically if I had to.
would you have liked to have trained for combat if that would have been available at the time?
Yes. But it's so interesting. I'm only 5'4". I don't know, but I could have done intel. I could have done different parts of combat,
Mhm.
and yes, I would.
Yeah, interesting. Were your drill instructors and officers generally men or women?
Women,
Wow.
strong, character, ethical, tough women,
Hmm.
smart,
Hmm.
very smart women.
Hmm. Um, just I'm jumping backward a little bit, but I was reading that there were some milestones for women in the Marines in the late 60s, such as Master Sergeant Barbara Jean Delinsky, who became the first Marine to serve in a combat zone in Vietnam, or in 1968, Lieutenant Colonel Jenny Wren was the first Marine to attend the Marine Corps Command and Staff College. Were you aware of these when, like, before you enlisted, or later on, or how did that work?
Um, to be quite honest, once you get into no, and then after you go through boot camp, then you really concentrate on successfully getting out of boot camp and getting your emblem.
Mm-hmm.
And then then you think about, and of course, Leah, the very first place I left after Paris Island for my MOS, which was admin, was back at Paris Island for another month. Yes, ma'am. Even though I was in boot camp, you just automatically snap in gear, and you have a lot of eyes on you back at Paris Island, and had the opportunity to go back.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, this is so interesting to me, at least, that my parents were the only one that came to see anybody get their emblems on. And I hadn't seen, of course, I was a whole 18 years old, and big time away from home and all that, in the Corps. And they had to stand like a football field away, and I couldn't even wave at them.
Oh.
I didn't even know that they're coming, and then they were, and then afterwards, I could see them, but you don't know how it is to see your parents
Yeah.
a football station away, and I snuck away. It was cool. That's the kind of parents I had.
So, and you said they were the only parents of your cohort who came from.
To see me get
Wow.
pinned. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Drove.
Would they write you letters as well when you were at?
Oh, during boot camp, yes, but you get your letters once a week.
Yeah.
And on Sundays, and yes.
Hmm. You mentioned how a lot of the instructors were very strong, ethical women. What was it like for you meeting other, young women your age from other parts of the country? Was it a first for you?
Yes. Look at my background: small farm, small Ohio town. I competitively swam throughout the state of Ohio on 3 different kinds of teams. So I'm very competitive. But in terms of seeing people from different walks of life in different parts of the U.S., that honestly was my very first time.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories like this. Yeah. Yeah. Were there any surprises?
First day seeing hearing a garbage can metal can lid rolling down the barracks. But in terms of people, um, you get to, we're all different, and that's the greatness with the core,
Mm,
that we did have a couple of dropouts, but those who made it, we're all green, we're all Marines. End of story.
yeah.
End
Yeah.
of story.
Yeah. That's hmm. Well, I'm not sure about the 9 weeks of basic training, but when you were at Paris Island for a month after that, did you have any liberty, any opportunity to travel a little bit in the South? Mm.
Oh, no, absolutely. You know, you were there to learn a job, and Buford and the area is beautiful,
Yeah.
and the people are genuine, and the people are very open to military,
Mm.
and it was wonderful.
Mm. Wow. At what point in time did you take aptitude tests? And I guess the second half of the question is, when were you assigned your MOS? I think it's 0150, like for administrative.
Well, well, my gunny recruiter, Gunny Fondo, I had to take a battery of tests, and it was really interesting when I got to the Corps to boot camp. They saw that I had played trumpet, and all this.
Yeah.
So I tried out for the Marine Corps band, and evidently on my different scales, I was off a wee little bit, and I didn't make the band.
Oh.
But I got to try out for that, and they were also interested in my artistic skills. And however, I guess they needed administrative people, or a lot if they needed them, or it was a great place to put people where they didn't know where to put them. But I kind of think not.
I would imagine they would need a lot of administrative work. There's some. Yeah. Yeah. So, what was your first responsibility? When you're after basic training.
I went to Sinclair Fleet, and that was the Marine Corps command out of the Atlantic, and that was in Norfolk. And it was a small Marine Corps detachment.
And what was like the nature of your responsibilities when you were I never know how to pronounce it, Sinclair, the command.
Yes, Sinclair Fleet.
U.S. Atlantic Fleet.
Mm-hmm. And I was real privileged just being assigned there. I was assigned to, I believe, General Extell, but don't quote me on that particular general. But I had top secret and eyes only, and I would do his message boards in the morning. And a driver would pick me up at the WM barracks at 0400 and pick me up.
Wow.
And I would go to the command center and pick up his messages. And I was instructed in Zulu time. I had to read Zulu time, and that's an international time.
Oh.
And I would put together his briefings for the Atlantic Fleet.
Oh, okay. So you would need like this top secret clearance because obviously it's sensitive information. Wow.
What was going on minute by minute on half the globe.
Oh my goodness. I was.
Who would I know? I was from Monroe. I was a whole 18-year-old. I thought it was cool.
Well, I mean, I know that the U.S. Atlantic Command in Norfolk from 47 to 93 were really focused on the defense of the Atlantic sea lanes against Soviet attack. So were you noticing information that concerning this? Did people
Well,
casually discuss the Cold War a lot?
but I think the most important part of that, because everything was classified, and I'm sure it's declassified now,
Mhm.
but what was really important was this particular general and his team brought in the Harrier for the
Oh,
US.
yeah.
And the Harrier is the jet that, you know, lands, will land like this, and then will take
Yeah.
off like this, and then take off. And the general's responsibility was to launch it in the US from the UK.
This is when both countries were working together on the
Yeah,
Harry. Yeah.
on the Harrier, right. And with Great Britain and the UK and the US.
So cool.
That was pretty exciting.
Were you able to witness the launch? Like,
I saw Harriers and stuff.
wow.
Um, but again, I was messaging intel and communications, and that was my that was um, the majority of my work was there. It was outstanding.
Yeah.
Coolness was the general would time to time go to war games to keep the Marines fit and mentally prepared. So we would have war games, and I had the opportunity to get on Huey's and go with the general's team down to war games and seeing them being played out, and
Oh,
the blue against the red, and saw that was interesting that the general had a full tent with wooden floors and wooden furniture. And of course, the Marines in that particular war games were in tents. The toilet paper was on uh, limbs of trees. And I mean, these were real war games.
mm.
And but having the ability to see male Marines in action, that's pretty outstanding. That
Oh,
was an
yeah.
outstanding opportunities.
And what were you being asked to do? Like when you were going into the UE to go to the war games and the war games themselves, like what was
Just
the
observe and be, to be observant, and just it was kind of a thank you for me to be part of the
role?
team. And I
Wow.
didn't have any specific role, was just to, as part of the general's team.
Oh, it's really cool. Yeah. How did you find working with this particular general?
And his colonel underneath him, and I
Mhm.
I was really close to the different colonel and the different enlisted underneath the general. I would see the general occasionally, and it wasn't like a one-on-one. We always have chain of command,
Mhm.
and we always have our duty stations, and so I would report to a colonel who then reported to the general. But I would see the general daily, but I didn't report directly to him.
Hmm. And when you were communicating information, like, were you required to code it in any way, or
Oh
how
no,
was it being relayed?
it was in it was already so the general could read it, and it always was stamped eyes only,
Wow.
and
Mm.
that that it just I was the person just to transfer everything over, and of course then he and his staff would then do um, the military operations.
Well, what was it like being in this, like, call it a nerve center, in terms of the Atlantic defense of the
That,
US?
I didn't know anything else. And that was always, it was just the way of life. And I didn't know, however, I knew it was kind of special, very honored. I didn't have to pick up any duty at the WM barracks. And I always had a driver pick me up at 0400 in the morning.
Mhm.
And I didn't have to stand watch at the barracks. And probably my colleagues really didn't think that. And I didn't have to go out for inspections or prepare for inspections. And it probably wasn't that well taken with my other WMs. Um, but I mean, I would have done it, but I typically was, you know, working with that team. And so I didn't have general duties per se. If my colleagues hear this, do not hold that against me, please.
Yeah, no, I don't think you had a choice if you had to be picked up at 4 in the morning. You know,
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah. And um, were the barracks, the WM barracks, at Norfolk itself, and did you like living there? And
Um, Barracks, I shared it with a sergeant, actually a sergeant before she moved out. And it's two bunks, and you have your I forget what they called it, but you have your one container to put your life possessions in, and you have your um, lockers, and that was it. But the camaraderie of when I was there was very important.
mm, yeah,
But I will say, I just remember this about boot camp. It's very interesting. We could decorate our lockers any way we want because that was the first time away from home and everything. And being a child of the 70s, my lockers, my two lockers, had these huge, beautiful flowers from the top to the bottom. And because remember that was Hyde Ashbury, that was the 70s, that was the hippies and stuff. So I was a Marine and I was drawing flowers on my locker. And I'm sure they had to paint them when I graduated from boot camp.
well, I do remember flower power, and
Yes, yes. And so my lockers in the Marine Corps had these huge, big, all these different color flowers and all that from top to bottom. And they said it was fine. It, private foreman, it was fine. And they probably thought I was, probably not going to make this program. But, you know, I did what they said I could do.
it's sort of. I'm also reminded of a question that I'd written down about boot camp. I was reading that in the late '60s there was a course for the women Marines on how to apply makeup or groom or do their nails.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
this when you? Yeah.
Now remember, there was all different kinds of people at different what was normal, for a teenager in that, and we had hygiene lessons. We had how to groom and how to look properly
Yeah.
in your uniform, what was acceptable and what was not acceptable. And it was good. We were all Marines and we had to have a basic understanding of how to look like a female Marine. And you nailed it on the head. You nailed it. And yes, we did.
Yeah. So it's almost like trying to teach a way of comportment, I think, for the Marines. Yeah.
Have you not seen a woman Marine or a male Marine look bad in their dress blues?
No, never.
See?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So um, you're at Norfolk for, I think, close to a year. I do have one more question I meant to ask. You'd written down that while you were there, you were also a member of the staff secretary for the Fleet Marine Force Atlantic. So I
And
was,
that's the same as the Sink Plant Fleet.
oh, okay. I didn't know if it was another
Yeah.
committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. It was the same organization, and damn proud to be part of it.
When were you assigned to the headquarters of the Marine Corps in Washington, D.C. and area?
And that was that was outstanding. And at that time, I was dating a particular person that was transferred up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just asked if I could be going, with this particular male Marine and to be transferred up there. And my great general had orders for me within a day that I could go. He made it happen.
So you were they really respected you and your.
Well, no, I respect him. I respect.
Yeah.
Yes, he was wonderful.
Sorry, there's a plane right now. Maybe I'll wait a second.
Sure.
Sure, thanks. Okay, so were you excited?
Headquarters Marine Corps?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Just Headquarters Marine Corps, Pentagon. How exciting can that be?
I know. I mean, so it was in the Pentagon itself. That's what I was supposed to ask you. Yeah.
And the first week I get there, this is very interesting, at least, again, I say at least to me, that they're trying to find me a slot. I'm MOS 0, I believe 150 admin.
Mm-hmm.
And first week I'm there, I interview for the main desk in the White House.
Oh my goodness.
And a gunny was a female WM was going to retire. And so they said, well, would you like to work at the White House? And I said, yes. And had the opportunity and was going to, do my full interview and all that. And the gunny decided not to retire. So then I was assigned to plans, PL, and again, I was admin, top secret communication, and I would type up and of all the materials happening globally. And then those were given to, I believe, 12 officers, 15 officers of plans. And then that material then went to the commandant and then to the Joint Chief of Staff, and then ultimately to the president.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Here's a funny story about the gun. Are you ready for a funny story?
I am.
So with the clearance and all that, there had to be, I don't know what rank, and I was a corporal at the time. At that point in time, we actually had real paper, real typewriters, and this top secret and eyes only communication had to be bagged and then driven off site in what we call a 1.5 tons. And somebody had to sit back there that had the clearance in back on top of these big, huge piles of information, top secret information that had to be destroyed. So I pulled duty once a month. I'm only 5'4", got up on the big piles of paper in this 1.5 tons.
My gosh.
and I had to wear a 45. I do not know how to shoot a 45, but it was loaded and I had to be armed. So
Oh,
I had a 45 on me sitting in the back of a ton and a half, and that was part of my job.
my goodness. Did anybody show you informally how to shoot a 45?
No, they kept the safety on.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty wild. Um, you also mentioned that you were often involved in the communications against foreign hostile campaigns. Would you like to talk about any of them?
Well, the closest one, it was in general what we were required to do. If we were on red alert, we couldn't leave the building. I believe we only had to do one of those, and it was during the Pueblo, and now that's declassified. It had to do with North Korea and South Korea and a ship that went over to the North Korean side, and we were trying to get that, I believe, that ship back. And that it was a Pueblo, and had to not leave the building, and was kind of like on lockdown. But other than that, it was just daily briefings of everything going on in the world, hostile or non-hostile, but mostly hostile. And again, it wasn't my job to debrief or to interpret. My job was to get the communications, type them out, and get them to the right people, the right staff on plans.
Was it difficult to know who was the right staff, or was it very?
Oh no, you clearly know if this was going to Colonel Toff, you would send it to Colonel Toff or hand carry it. And a lot of it was hand carry. And it was interesting. And one time I had the opportunity of working with Colonel Toff in working with the Marine Corps budget for the year and going to Congress. And I got to sit in on, at least one congressional hearing on every year. The commandant has to say we need X amount of dollars for this year and break it down. And so I was, back in the day, I was helping with that.
Oh, so the congressional hearing was in relation to the annual budget?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was interesting.
So were you involved in like the typing or the book?
The typing and just putting all the material together and helping Colonel Toff brief the commandant and that kind of stuff.
And just jumping back a little bit, like I know that the North Korean attack on the USS Pueblo was in 1968. So when you were there, I guess in around 75, was this the point where the US was trying to get the ship itself back?
That, I really don't remember. I just know it was called Operation US, the Pueblo, and had to do with North Korea. And, it was very heated. And that's all I can remember and all that I can say.
Sure. Where were you living in DC? Like, were you in barracks? Were you able to live in?
I was in barracks, and then I went into an apartment. I lived in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, okay. Okay. You also wrote that, of course, it was a very exciting year, the pre-bicentennial. So what were some of the, I don't know to call it the pre-bicentennial events, like, or
And this was in the U.S. Capitol of these United States.
Yeah.
Smithsonian, and then all the the Smithsonian, they had special ceremonies at all the memorials, the Lincoln, the Washington, at the Washington Monument, the Lincoln, and different memorials. And there were, being a lance corporal and then a corporal, we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money. All these were free. And the whole world was watching DC. And to be a part of that, to have that experience, unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Unbelievable to be there, to experience, to be part of this great country's birthday.
Cool, because it's like all the events leading up to July 4th were also being celebrated and televised to a large. Yeah, cool.
It was a couple years of celebration for these United States. It was awesome.
Yeah, no. I think you mentioned another highlight, that there was a ceremony for General White.
Right, and that was the general. Thank you so much. That was the general responsible for plans, and he was retiring, and we were part of the envoy to be part of that retirement. And we went to the tomb of the unknown soldier and saw the changing of the guard, and it was for General White. And we got to sit with General White as part of the ceremony in honor of him.
Oh my goodness.
Only for the general and his team. And I got, it was remarkable.
It's like,
and then also being part of the Navy Yard, you're right by the famous cemetery, and you can see all our fallen heroes.
Yes.
Our national cemetery, and that is quite an experience. And then a couple of times I had to carry over documents to the Pentagon. That is quite an experience.
Oh my goodness.
And from a kid from Monroe, Ohio, growing up by a cow farm, what an opportunity.
Oh my goodness, yes. And we can just
what I experienced and I could see. Thank you, Corps. Thank you, Marine Corps.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember where you were when you heard about the end of the Vietnam War on April 30th, 1975?
Well, I was still in.
Yeah.
So it was, it really didn't reflect on me because I was still working every day as a Marine. I was still a Marine. So it really didn't impact me until afterwards. And I was at a junior college for a while before I got into Miami of Ohio. And I had seen a couple of the vets coming back, and I remember they were missing arms and legs and the whole bit, and how they were treated. And then that's when it hit me. They weren't treated very well.
No.
Not with respect. And I had just come from the Corps, which is total respect. It was just hard. It was hard for me to understand, to take it all in. It was surreal.
Yes. Yeah. When does your active duty end?
Oh gosh. Well, I was a corporal, and I still carry the picture of me getting my my discharge, my honorable discharge, and I'm raising my right hand to say I'll be in the reserves. And that was great because I wanted my parents had 4 kids, and vice president of a bank didn't make a whole lot of money, and I wanted to go to grad school, and which means I had to go to undergrad school.
True.
So the Marine Corps paid for my undergrad and most of my grad school through the GI Bill. That is where I say thank you. And yeah, that's where I say thank you to the Corps.
Wow. Did you begin your studies right away? I think you mentioned you went.
Yes. But the funny thing is, this is where I kind of shocked my mom, because right after active duty, I wanted to become a DC Metropolitan Police, a police person.
Oh.
And my mom, I thought she was going to have, please excuse me, Mom, she's no longer with us. I thought she was going to have a heart attack. Because here I went from having a full scholarship to the Marine Corps, and now to be a DC policeman. Didn't go over that well.
Didn't go over. No.
And because she knew I wanted to go to grad school and the whole bit. So, after prayer and, discussing it, everything, I ended up back in Monroe, Ohio for a short time, and went to Miami of Ohio for my undergrad as well as my graduate degree. And their business school is very tough to get into, and very in the upper 2%, I think, of the country, and in both undergrad and graduate. And so I went there. Of course, you only go the best. Corps, Miami Corps. So I went to Miami and got my MBA in 1983.
Oh my goodness. And when you were doing your undergraduate degree, was this the point that you were in the reserves?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, cool. How did you juggle the two?
They were very kind in Dayton, Ohio. I was a recruiter, and then I have another funny story, but and then I was the chief, the admin chief, because that was my background, was admin. Everything was in triplicate, and it was still with typewriters. And there's a lot of paperwork in the government. There's a lot of paperwork to keep all the admin together, and that's what I did. 2 days out of the month and 2 weeks. And one time, we were painting Jeeps. So he said, "Well, just be real camouflage, and we're going to paint Jeeps." And I said, "Okay." So our whole command's doing that over the weekend, or no, it was over the 2 weeks. And I got artistic, and it looked really great painting this camouflage Jeep that they had to repaint it.
Oh, why?
Because it was beautiful. I was the one that did the flowers on my barracks, on my lockers. So this Jeep had the Patti touch. And my gunny just looked at it, just started cracking up and said, no. And they had to repaint it real camouflage.
Do you have a picture of it before it was repainted?
No, and I should have. At that time, guess what? There was no cell phones that could take pictures. We actually had what we call today a rotary dial phone.
I know, it's so wild. I mean, I'm following shortly.
They're a little bit different.
Find you, so yeah. I also grew up with the rotary phone and cameras.
I had a great command there in Dayton, and it's no longer there. And
What is this, the contingency operating base, 1st Battalion, 24th Marine in Dayton? Okay.
Dayton, Ohio, and now it's a weapons detachment. It's a live weapons
Oh,
company.
oh,
And so my old company is no longer. My old battalion is no longer.
and how long were you in the reserves?
Almost 3 years.
Wow. Do you want to, would you like to explain why you received the National Defense Ribbon?
And you know, that is an honor. And it was the people that, the Marines that graduated, male and female, and served from a particular time were given this medal and this ribbon. So it wasn't discriminatory. It wasn't due to an award because of bravery or courage or like a Purple Heart or the Bronze Star, but we were given that in terms of serving. And during that time period, I got that particular medal and ribbon.
Yeah, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that it corresponded to different periods of time, such as, you know, the Korean War earlier on, Vietnam War, etc. Yeah. Okay. So would you like to describe your civilian career briefly?
I like how you say briefly, because you know, I do a lot of different things, but what the Corps really helped me on, so I had a graduate degree, and then I wanted to do medical, something medical, because I could do very well selling pencils and do very well, or I could help save somebody's life or extend somebody's life. And I've always been medical. So what I do is, and right now I'm concentrating on neonatology, the NICU, and my specialty is gastroenterology and enteral therapy. And I've always, for example, been a product manager and develop and be on a team. Hence the Marine Corps. I was on a team. I was a cross-functional leader as a product manager to develop enteral infant devices from theory on the whiteboard to actually putting it in the patient. And then I was a clinical educator, and I would teach how to use this device. And then I was corporate accounts, and I would contract so all the hospitals could use this device. And that's what gets me up in the morning, to help a patient, help save somebody.
Yes, like different faucets, but all to help people's lives and health.
Like, thank you, Corps, because it drove me to do something better than myself.
Do you think, like, if you had not gone to the Corps, like, you would have been okay, but wouldn't have developed things to the same extent?
Well, of course, if I went to school, I would have been on a completely different path.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I was once interested in being an engineer in orthopedic medical devices, to be an engineer to do that. So who knows? But it's really interesting that God put me on this path to help. And so
that's your, this is your mission. you wrote that female veterans are often a silent minority. How so? Or like, how would you explain that a little more?
Oh, that's a good question. You wouldn't think with me talking that we would be silent, but but yesterday I was saying that I was being interviewed by this prestigious organization, the Pittsburgh Military Museum, and all that, to be a woman Marine. And somebody said, "You mean there's women in the Marine Corps?" To this date,
Yeah, yeah.
we're the proud, and when they say the few, we're the smallest organization in all the different military systems. We're the
Oh,
smallest
really?
group,
Really?
women Marines, and
Yeah.
you talk about silent, but overall, if you think of an Army in combat or a Marine in combat, you never think about that female that's either with him medically or in combat or or working in the United States. Women have always just been doing their outstanding job, being extraordinary, and there's not a whole lot of press about it.
No, no. Yeah, on this note, could I send you a link of an interview that was done before I came here of a World War II woman Marine?
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I hope I honored her in my speech.
Thank you. And yeah. So
did you find us kind of similar in thought?
It was a little bit a different time. So you're right, World War II, but similar in thought that there was a kind of demand for excellence and also a person who was highly structured and worked through things very thoroughly. So that's where I see a lot of similarities. I think she chose a somewhat different path later on, maybe more with sculpture and visual arts. I'd have to go back, but I do see that sort of commitment and that striving for excellence. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I love to hear my fellow sister, my fellow Marine.
There's another woman who's going to be on the honor flight where who I had the pleasure of speaking to, and she served a few years before you, and working, helping out with the early computers, when they were this high and they were the key punch, and had I guess a technical inclination. So I'll be on the trip too, hopefully as a guardian, and if I'll try to introduce you to each other, and that would be.
So what did you learn from her? And what military branch did she serve?
Oh, so she served in the Marine. I've had the opportunity to interview.
Wonderful. Yes, I love to, meet her. What was her name?
Victoria Cobbett, or Vicky Cobbett.
I met her at our previous gala, but it was just a minute, and I would really like to, speak with her and meet with her, and get to know her.
Yeah.
So how was that? Was that an interesting interview? I bet it was.
It was fascinating, and I somehow also I was reading some statistic about where the women Marines were placed, and I saw from that very few of them were in anything to do with technical side. And I said, do you have did you score high in the aptitude test for this? And she was a little modest about it, but she said yes, I did. And I think the way she described boot camp remind me a little bit of yours, like, being young and being sort of challenged and also,
Very naive.
and getting adjusted to the system and seeing, like maybe it wasn't thrilled, but every moment, but seeing the value in it and the commitment, and landed up marrying a Marine. And I hope I'm not misrepresenting her. Yeah. So, but very, very, very interesting. So, yeah. Um, so, okay. So I'm not trying to be like Mrs. Negative, but had you heard about stories from other women Marines whom you knew of harassment? Did you ever encounter attitudes from men? Well, let me put it this way. What were the attitudes you encountered?
And again, I was an open page, and I was a lot of naivety. And so everything I learned, that were all green. We were at that point in time in the 70s and whatnot, we were treated the same as our fellow male Marines. And but maybe a couple of times there would be a discourse that was not correct as a Marine, but it was very few and very far between, just very few occasions. All in all, and from what I heard today with women officers and generals and all that having harassment and all the female issues, and with the male or with the different biases with the same sex and all of that. Honestly, it didn't affect me in the 70s, and maybe I was too blindsided, but I didn't pick up on it, and nor was I treated. I was always treated just. So that means if the Marine Corps, if my team did good, we did great. And if we had some errors, we all equally found out about our errors.
Yeah, like you wrote, we were all green, yeah.
We were all green, and which really helped me in the fact that, like I said, when I got out of grad school, I was corporate accounts and national accounts for my first company for 27 years. And women in corporate accounts at that point in time was less than 10% nationally. And I was successful because I didn't belong to the old boys club, because there was no old boys club.
No.
It was just opportunity. I had a great boss, the mentor at Corpac. And when I did really, really good, I made President's List and I made President's Club, and I was awarded beautifully. But then when I didn't do so well, as with any, any of his reps or any of his team, we were just told there was no discrimination. There wasn't discrimination in the Corps, and at Corpac there was no discrimination.
That's good.
And absolutely, I've been blessed that way.
Yeah. So the Pritzker Military Museum and Library is dedicating to collecting stories and artifacts of the citizen soldier. What does the term citizen soldier mean to you?
First of all, it's very much an honor to speak with you. That's a really good question. Citizen is citizen of this United States, to represent this United States, these United States, and to lead it to my best of my ability to be a citizen, to give back and to keep our country strong and defend our country. That to be a good citizen.
Yeah, that's, contribute to it. Did you marry or have children? And
so, actually, I married a wonderful man, Gary, my husband, and he's retired, and he is an actuary. And an actuary, undergrad, Northwestern math, and a graduate degree in actuarial science. And then he had to take 10 years of testing, and that's equivalent to a PhD in actuarial science. And they are the wonderful people that come up with the mortality tables that in 20 years, this company will have enough money to take care of their insured. And in essence, he's a geek. He is a math geek, and everything is white and black, and everything's an algorithm. And we work beautifully because I am not a math geek. I'm a kind of a people's person, and so we're quite different, but yet we were made for each other. And it's good because when I first met him, I said, "Boy, I had the pleasure or the opportunity I was dating some NFL football players. I was dating other people, and I had the opportunity. And I said, on our very first time I met him, I said, "You know what? You're the very first person that actually put a whole sentence together and punctuated it correctly." And we had our first date, and 9 months later, 10 months later, we were married, and it's been 35 years.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's always good to be married to a Spock of Star Trek, because he's very mathematical and very logical.
A good combination.
Yes.
Is there something about your military service that you would like to add, or a reflection that we did not cover?
Well, that's a good question. You can see that I care very much.
Yes.
For the Corps. I care very much for the U.S. And it gave me the opportunity to know I want and to go for it. It's like I can. And you put your mind to it, and you pray on it, and God's good. And at the it always works out for the best.
Yes. Yeah.
And I do it again. I would do it again. And I feel so bad for this generation of millennials and I really feel bad for them, because it appears that they give up way too easy. It appears that they can go back to mom and dad and just go back and say, I give up. And oh, by the way, can you help me out and pay for everything? And I just feel like quitting today, and because it just didn't work out today. But if they could go through the Corps for 2 years or 3 years, I bet they wouldn't go back to their mom and dad as a crutch. I bet they just wouldn't do that.
It's like nowadays we hear a lot about the word resilience, so maybe it would help provide more resilience.
And it could. It just gives you, the Corps gives you leadership. The Corps gives you the ability to think individually, but yet as a whole, as a team. And we were always taught, as with the Army and with our brothers and sisters, particularly with the Army, we don't leave people, Americans, behind. We don't leave our brothers behind, nor our sisters. And that needs to be taught today, in my opinion.
Do you think any of it is being redressed? Maybe in particular, the criticism leveled against Vietnam War veterans. Like, do you think there are any efforts today to
Right, there's legislation actually to call these veterans heroes. And I don't know that about that particular legislation, but they're actually, and how long has it been for us to have legislation now in 2021? What does that tell you? But it's happening, and it's good.
What would you like to tell whoever watches your video about the cap and blouse that you're wearing right now?
Oh, that's good. Of course, Marine Corps, Vietnam, where I served. This is the Marine Corps League of Lake Zurich, Illinois. It's a detachment of veterans of Marines and Marines only. And it's a small group. And I'm a newer member, and the Corps changed my life. And you know what? I want to give back. So I honor this attachment.
Yes. Well, if there's nothing else to add, on behalf of the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, I would like to thank you for your service and for speaking out today. And as a token of our thanks, we will be sending you a challenge coin from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library.
It's an honor and a pleasure, and thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm looking forward to meeting you on the honor flight, since I'll be one of the Guardians.
Yes, I can't wait. Oh, Leah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.